We are in Beshelach or Beshelach. Shelach means apostle or sent. You know the phrase, let my people go? Okay, you got to do it like me. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. There's no such thing in the Bible. It does not exist. It never says, let my people go. Not once. It says this, B'shalach, in sending my people. It never says, let my people go. Shalach, shaliach, apostle, sent one. Send them away. Send my people. In other words, turn them into apostles, sent out. It never says, let my people go. It never says, give them freedom. It says, send them out from you. So the title of this Torah portion in Exodus chapter 13 is, let my people go. In Pharaoh sending the people is what it says in Hebrew. The Shalach Paro, in Pharaoh sending the people. All right, I've got the verses here for you. We're going to read from 17 through 20, Exodus 13, 17 through 20. In Paro sending the people, God did not lead them by the derech of the land of the Philistines, even though that was near. For God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the derech, the way of the wilderness, to the Reed Sea. And the sons of Israel went up in fives, is what it says, b'chamashim, in fives, or bound together in units for war, in fives, from the land of Egypt. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones from here with you. Then they set out from Sukkot and camped in Etam on the edge of the wilderness. Sounds pretty straightforward. It is anything but. So the thing that jumped out to me that I had a question about that I didn't understand was the very first thing it says after it doesn't say, let my people go. It says God didn't lead them by the way of the Philistines, even though it was near. So he led them by the way of the wilderness to the Reed Sea. So, first of all, what does that mean? First of all, what's the way of the Philistines? And how close is it to them? So here's the first thing. The first thing is this. Sinai Peninsula is not Israel. It never has been Israel. It is Egypt.
Right.
It is land that belongs to Egypt, always has belonged to Egypt. In the Bible, it belongs to Egypt. That's why Israel gave it back. When did they give it back? 78 or something? When did Israel give back the Sinai to Egypt?
That was right about the time of Jimmy Carter, yeah.
Yeah, right around the time of Jimmy Carter. So around the 70s. I can't remember the date. I should have looked it up, but I don't remember. They gave it, and all the Jews were freaking, why would you give back the Sinai Peninsula? That's tens of thousands of square miles of land.
Right.
Because it belongs to Egypt. It doesn't belong to Israel. They took it in war in 1956. 82, thank you. So 1982, we gave it back. 56, we took it in war from Egypt. This entire Sinai Peninsula is Egypt. This means that Mount Sinai is not in the Sinai Peninsula because it's not in Egypt. It's in, well, if you believe the New Testament, it's in Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe the New Testament, you know it's not in Egypt because Israel left Egypt to go to Mount Sinai, right?
Right.
Well, this is Egypt. The Sinai Peninsula is Egypt. So Mount Sinai is not there. It's got to be outside of The Sinai Peninsula.
Right.
Pretty simple, yes? Okay. So this is all Egypt. Now the way of the Philistines was a road, a very well-established road, that went from Egypt up to Syria. And it went right along the coast of Egypt up to what is now called the Gaza Strip. And I left the Gaza Strip in there on purpose so you could see where it is. This is the Philistines. You know, they want to have a Palestinian homeland. Well, Palestine is Palestine, Philistine.
Right.
They want to have a Philistine homeland. I don't know if that occurred to you or not, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Gaza Strip is where the Philistines were located for the most part. They were all over Canaan, but they were for the most part centered in the coastal plain along the coast of Israel. And the Gaza Strip is like the biggest way station or the biggest city, the biggest area of the way of the Philistines. All they had to do, now listen, they're in Egypt, which goes all the way to Sinai, all the way to the border of Canaan and Egypt. So to get to the way of the Philistines, what did they have to do?
Hop over the fence.
Go 2 miles. So why didn't God just send them that way?
Right.
All they had to do was stay in Egypt on the road, the way of the Philistines, and hop over the border of Canaan, and they're there. In the Holy Land, where God had promised the Jews a homeland, right?
Yeah.
God was going to take the Jews out of Egypt to something. So, there's a bunch of problems here. First of all, why did God not take them along the way of the Philistines? What was God's rationale? And why did he take them along the route of the way of the wilderness?
Because Moses wasn't supposed to leave. The promised land
A lot of different questions. Plus, which way did they go? If they're going out of Egypt, which way did they go? Plus, where were they really going? Were they going to a homeland? Where did God say he wanted them to go? Where did Pharaoh say that he would allow them to go? There are a lot of questions here. All right? So here's the way of the wilderness. They don't leave Egypt until they get to the Reed Sea.
Right.
The other tongue of the Reed Sea. What is this called? The Gulf of Suez. The right tongue of the Reed Sea. Everybody thinks they crossed in the left tongue of the Reed Sea. They did not, because they weren't going to Egypt. They're already in Egypt. They got to get out of Egypt. So they go across the Sinai, which is what? Egypt. And then they're going to cross at Baal Zephon, Pi Hahirot, which we're going to see, and then they leave Egypt. So, again, where are they going? Where is God taking them? Where are they going? So these verses that we're looking at, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Pelishtim, even though it was near, very near, just a couple miles near. So, look at this. This is really cool. I got this from a rabbi. Didn't get his name. I should have put his name, but I didn't get it. The way of the land of the Philistines was an official route under Egyptian jurisdiction. It would have been recorded at the checkpoints on the route that Paro's subjects passed through. So what they're passing through is the way of the Pelishtim, and there are checkpoints along the way. Who does this land belong to? Paro, king of Egypt. So at each of these way stations, they got to say, please let us through. Belongs to Pharaoh. If Paro sends them, He's going to send them with some official something, a letter, officials with them, something. And so when they pass through, everybody knows these are people of Egypt. It would have been recorded at the checkpoints of the route that Paro's subjects passed through. So they are subject to Paro. They are his slaves. And he's allowing them to pass along that road. Especially in situations of war, they would have sent Paro's letters similar to this petition for aid sent to Paro by Beridia, the king of Shechem. Where's Shechem? Right smack in the middle of the land of Israel. This is from a Jew. And it says, to my king, the Lord, my son, S-U-N. So speaks Beridia, the king's faithful servant. Beneath the feet of my king, my lord, and my son, I grovel on belly and back. So, even if Paro had sent them, because God said to, even if Paro had sent them out by the way of the Palestine, they would still be his subjects. So God has to send them by a way that's going to completely break that subjugation to Paro. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So again, where is God sending them? To a homeland? Where is he sending them? To the wilderness? Where is he sending them? All right, so here are the reasons that he says that he's sending them. God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Or with who? So they're going, like I'm not going to send them on the way of the Palestine, because on that way they might see war and turn back and go to Egypt. Yes? War with who? It doesn't make sense. War with who? They're Egypt's subjects. They're representatives of Egypt. So who are they going to be at war with? What war are they going to see that's going to make them return to Egypt? Are you with me so far?
Yes.
A lot of problems here. So what we have to do is define the phrase return to Egypt. What does that mean? It's very well defined in the Bible. Exodus 14:12. Let's look at that. So God says, I'm going to send you out. And in 14:12 it says, is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? Because it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. So the mentality is we want to stay in Egypt, right? All right, but that's not returning to Egypt. That's, I want to stay in Egypt. Chapter 16, verse 3. The sons of Israel said to them, I wish we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out in this wilderness to kill the whole assembly of us with hunger. So this is not God's rationale. This has nothing to do with him saying they'll want to return to Egypt. What is this about? What is this one about? What is their rationale? What is Israel's rationale for wanting to stay in Egypt? Food. This is not what God is saying. Chapter 17, verse 3. But the people thirsted there for water, and they grumbled against Moshe and said, why now have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So what is this one about? Water. Okay, here's what I'm saying. God says, I don't want to take them by the way of the Philistines. Why? Because they'll see war and want to what? Return to Egypt. It is a specific phrase. Return to Egypt. Now the verses we're looking at is not this. This is, and the reason I'm saying this is because this is what I've heard from the church for 40 years. Oh, we want the food, we want the water, we want to return to Egypt. Keith Green, who was Jewish, a Messianic Jew, a Jewish Christian, Keith Green, he was a musician, a Jewish Christian, wrote a song, So You Want to Go Back to Egypt? right? And it's about the food and the peace and the eating leeks and onions by the Nile. And it's about food and water, and we had it better in Egypt. This is not what God is saying. This has nothing to do with that. It's a specific phrase, return to Egypt. And it's going to freak you out when I show you what it means. All right, let's look at Numbers 11. You know, that song that Keith Green wrote was really catchy. Great song. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. This is not what God was saying about returning to Egypt. This is what the people were saying. Numbers 11:5. We remember the fish which we used to eat free in Egypt, the cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic. Look at the end of verse 6. All we have to look at is this rotten manna. And they're sick of it. They're sick of the manna. So this is also about food. Numbers chapter 14. This is after God sends out the 12 apostles to search the land. They come back with a bad report. Verse 2, all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moshe and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, I wish we'd have just died in the land of Egypt or die in the wilderness. Why are you sending us up there to a land of giants? Why would you want us to go up to this land of giants? So, what's their motive here? What's Israel's motive here for wanting to go and die in Egypt? Fear of being killed, yeah. You could say war, maybe, but it's just fear. This is not what God is saying. He's saying something completely different. Because if I send them by that way, they're going to want to return to Egypt. It's 2 miles away. I mean, it just seems logical. Just put them on the closest route, get them into the Holy Land. But his rationale is, I don't want them to return to Egypt. Chapter 20 of Numbers. Now they're at Kadesh. Verse 2, there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves against Moshe and Aharon, and the people fought with them. Why are they fighting with them? No water. No water. So this is not God's rationale. It's not because they're going to want food and want water and, see war, just regular wars like the giants. Not what it's about. And then Numbers 21, verse 5. The people spoke against God and Moshe. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There's no food, there's no water, and we hate this disgusting manna. So, again, it's about food and water. Always about food and water. So, what is God's rationale? What is God's rationale? These 3 words. Return to Egypt. If you don't know what this phrase means, you don't know what God's saying. And you end up writing songs like, so you want to go back to Egypt? What does this mean? Return to Egypt.
Return to slavery, return to bondage.
Return to slavery, return to bondage. Think bigger.
I know that, yeah.
Think bigger. Think future. All right, go to Deuteronomy 17. This is talking about the king. This is talking about when Israel, you want to set yourself up a king. Here's what he can do, and here's what he cannot do. And God starts defining his terms. Verse 16. He, the king, shall not multiply horses for himself, which Solomon did, nor shall he cause the people to Return to Egypt to multiply horses. He shall not cause the people to return to Egypt in order to multiply horses. That's God's rationale. He doesn't want Israel to see war and multiply horses, whatever that means.
Horses are animals of war.
Yes, that's right. Horses are animals of war. Since the Lord has said to you, you shall never again return that way. So we're starting to get a little bit of a clue as to what's going on. Remember, in the passage that we were looking at, it said that they went out of the land. They went up out of the land in fives, b'chamashim. Now they translate it armed for war. And God says, oh, they're going to see war and get scared and want to go back to Egypt. Unless that's not what it means. They're armed for war. And God says, I don't want them just to hop across the border and win a fight. I want them to go away from that. Because they'll see warfare and they'll want to go back to Egypt for what?
Horses.
For horses. In other words, Egypt, help us out.
Right.
Help us, Egypt. Give us tanks. Give us planes. Give us bullets.
Military aid.
Give us military aid. Exactly.
Back to looking for man for help.
Yes, it's looking not just to man. Who would they be looking to for their help?
Paro.
Paro. Yes. All right. You shall not return to Egypt for horses. Deuteronomy 26. In this, this is the curse in Deuteronomy, the curse. And it's a description of, basically, if you read it carefully, it's a description of the Holocaust. It's a description of the Holocaust.
We have verse 68. I think it's 6 to 8.
26. No, it's chapter 26.
But it's
Yeah, but the
verses
verses-
6
Yeah, I see that.
Only 19 verses.
I see that.
Probably 6 to 8.
No, it's not chapter 6. It's
verses 6 to 8.
oh, 6 through 8, you're saying. Okay.
Maybe.
Chapter 26, 6 through 8. Maybe. Let's find out.
Yes.
Well, this says, the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried to the Lord, God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction and our toil and our oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and with great terror and with signs and wonders. And that is absolutely not what I'm looking for. This is in the curse. This is the curse on Israel. It's chapter 28. Chapter 28, verse 68. So I had the chapter wrong, not the verse. The Lord will bring you back to Egypt in ships. Well, let's read verse 67. In the morning you will say, I wish it was evening. In the evening you would say, I wish it was morning. Because of the terror of your heart which you have, and for the sight of your eyes which you see. And the Lord will bring you back to Egypt in ships. By the way I spoke to you, I never want you to go that way again. There it is. The way that God said, I want you to go, is not which way? Which way did he say he didn't want to send them on?
Pharaoh's way.
No. The way of the Philistines, which is in Egypt. And he says, I'm going to take you back in ships to Egypt by a way that I said you're never going to go. Well, here's the way he said they're never going to go. How do you go back in ships on that?
Right, yeah. You have to,
Do you understand what I'm saying? It's land.
yeah.
It's not ships, it's land. And he says, I'll take you back in ships by the way that I said I don't want you going. So that tells us it's not ships. And it's not water. It's something else. It's a picture of ships and water and being brought back to Egypt. And what is going back to Egypt? What does that mean? What is that about?
Turn the bond in horses.
Getting horses for war. The phrase return to Egypt is always, always, always about warfare. Always. That's what it's about. It's not about food. It's not about drink. It's not about fear. It's about warfare. And remember, they went out armed for war. And then he says, I don't want them to see war and get scared and go back to Egypt. If you just read it on the surface. But if you look at the phrases that he defines, you see it's not that at all. It's about, I don't want them to go that way for warfare. I want them to go this way, armed for war. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. 2 Kings 17. 2 Kings 7. I cannot see. 2 Kings 17. All right, this is about Hoshea. The second year of Joash, son of Jehoaz, king of Israel, that's the south, Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, that's north, became king. 2 Kings 17. I was in 14. 2 Kings 17. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, that's the south, Hoshea, the son of Elah, became king over Israel in the north, in Samaria, and reigned 9 years. And he, who? No, Hoshea. Hoshea did evil in the sight of the Lord, only not as the kings of Israel who were before him. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against him. And Hoshea became his servant and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, who had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and say, Egypt, come help us against Assyria. Who is this saying this? Who is this going to Egypt for help? Hoshea, the king of Israel.
Southern king.
The northern.
Northern.
Hoshea, the king of Israel, is going to So, king of Egypt, the Paro, to ask for help. Give us horses. And God said, you will never go back that way again. And he did it. And guess what happens next? Israel is gone. Northern Israel, this is the last straw. And northern Israel, right after this, is dispersed. Look at verse 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and carried Israel away to exile to Assyria. That's it. Israel's done. This is where the quote, 10 lost tribes came from. Done. Because God said, you shall never go to Egypt for help in war. Even if you're being attacked by a 1 billion-man army, you will not go to Egypt for help. Are you starting to see the picture?
Yeah. Still surrounded by the enemy.
The trick is figuring out who the enemy is.
Yeah.
All right,
Looking at that.
Isaiah 30. Isaiah 30. Isaiah was in the south with the king of Judah. And Isaiah says, woe to the rebellious children who execute a plan, but it's not mine, and make an alliance, but not by my spirit. So they're linking themselves up with somebody that God doesn't want them to link themselves with, in order to add sin to sin. You're just making it worse. Who proceed down to Egypt without consulting me, and take refuge in the safety of Paro, and seek shelter in the shadow of Egypt. So the question is, who's attacking them that they go to Egypt to seek help from? Why are they asking Egypt for help during the time of Isaiah? Who attacked Judah during the time of Isaiah? And so Judah went to Egypt to ask for help. Who did?
Syrians?
The Assyrians, you think?
I don't know.
Okay. Isaiah 31. Isaiah 31. Woe to those who go down to Egypt. There's the phrase. You shall not return to Egypt. You shall not go down to Egypt. Woe to those who return to Egypt for help and rely on horses and trust in chariots because they are many and in horsemen because they're so strong. They don't look to the Holy One of Israel and they don't seek the Lord. Isaiah 36. Here's the answer to the question. It came about in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, you were right, Doug, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh. This guy Rabshakeh eventually went to Jerusalem. And he said, you guys are going to end up drinking your own urine and eating your own dung. Come down off the wall. God ain't going to help you, and either is Egypt. It ain't going to happen. Look at verse 14. Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. And don't let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Verse 16, don't listen to Hezekiah. Make your peace with me and come out to me, and then everybody will be at peace. Now look back at verse 5. I say, this is Rabshakeh talking, I say, your counsel and strength for war are empty words. Who are you relying on that you've rebelled against me? Who are you hanging on to that's going to help you? You're relying on the staff of this crushed reed, Egypt, on which if a man leans, it's going to snap and go into his hand and pierce him. That's how Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who rely on him. Now, this is the king of Assyria with about 180,000 man army. That's just the leaders. There's also artillery. There's also infantry. There's also cavalry. There's also war engines and chariots and machines and slingers and sappers, which dig under the wall. There's probably nearly 500,000 men army. And they go to Egypt for horses. And they come back to Jerusalem, and Rabshakeh says, don't rely on Egypt. And don't rely on the Lord either. Come out and make your peace with me. So, who was it in Isaiah 30 that attacked Jerusalem, and so they went to Egypt? Who was it? Who was it? Assyria. Not Syria, Assyria. Assyria. All right, Isaiah 36 gives us all the details about that. Now, that's the south. Now let's go back to the north. Hosea chapter 7. We know that the king Hosea, same name, was the one who finally did them in. Hosea chapter 7. Now, the king named Hosea, by the same name, was the one who put the nail in the coffin, last nail in the coffin, by going to So and asking for help. They returned to Egypt, which God said, don't ever, ever, ever do. Hosea 7, verse 11. So Ephraim has become like a silly dove without sense. They call to Egypt. They go to Assyria too. When they go, I will spread my net over them, and I will bring them down like the birds of the sky. I will chastise them in accordance with the proclamation to their assembly. So, they didn't just go to Egypt. Who else did they go to for help? All right, let's read it again. Verse 12. Verse 12. When they go, I will spread my net over them. Let's go back to verse 11. So Ephraim has become like a silly dove without sense. They call to Egypt and they go to Assyria. Why are they going back to Egypt? For horses, for help. They did the same thing with Assyria. But God never said you shall not return to Assyria, did he? Hosea 7:11. He never said don't go back to Assyria, did he? He said don't go back to Egypt. So they might get away with going to Assyria for help. Maybe.
Wasn't Assyria the ones attacking them?
This is northern Israel.
Oh.
This is northern Israel. And they did it more than once. Assyria attacked, Egypt attacked, the Philistines attacked, the Moabites attacked, the Ammonites attacked, the Hittites attacked. But when Assyria attacked, they called Egypt for help. And that was the last straw. But they had also gone to Assyria for help. That's not what made God mad. It's that they went to Egypt for help. And it's not because of Paro. It's because of Paro, who Paro is. Do you remember from 2 weeks ago who Paro is? Who is he? The false Messiah.
He's a vessel.
Yes, he's a vessel for destruction. He is the false Messiah. This is not about Israel. It's about the future. You shall not return to Egypt, or I'm going to send you back there in ships. By the way, I said you will never go. Overland in ships. So it's not about ships, it's not about water. Okay, chapter 8, Hosea chapter 8, verse 11. Since Ephraim has multiplied altars for sin, they've become altars for sin. Though I wrote for him 10,000 of my Torah, they're regarded like some weird thing, some strange thing. As for my sacrificial gifts, they sacrifice the flesh and they eat it, but the Lord takes no delight in them. Now he will remember their iniquity and visit them or punish them for their sins. They will return to Egypt. It's exactly what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28. I will make you return to Egypt in ships, where you will return to, do you remember what it said? Slavery. And you'll be sold in the slave market.
It says, back to Egypt.
I like that. Back to Egypt with them. That's right. So it's talking about the future. I will return them to Egypt. Are you with me so far? Does it make sense? Don't go, by the way, the Philistines, you shall never return to Egypt again. And then he says, I'm going to return you to Egypt. Hosea chapter 9, verse 3. They will not remain in the Lord's land, but Ephraim will return to Egypt. Well, how are they going to return to Egypt? We just said it. God will send them back. God will send them there. So, the phrase return to Egypt, what's it about? What's it about? Warfare. About war. And he says, I never want you to go to Paro or Egypt for help in war. And they did it anyway. And so God disperses them. And he says, because of this, in the future, I'm going to return you back to Egypt. I will. Only this time, you're going back for slavery. And you're going to be sold in the slave market. And nobody will buy you. That's how bad it's going to be. Okay? So, return to Egypt. Return to Egypt it means looking to Egypt for help in war as a savior, as a helper, as a shield. That's what made God mad. All right, so that's one big chunk. Here's the second chunk. Where were they headed? Where were they headed? God has taken them, it says, Paro, Vashalach Paro Ha'am Yisrael. When Paro sent out the people of Israel, where was he sending them to? The promised land. What else? The kingdom. What else? What? That day. What else? The day of the Lord. What else? The kingdom. What else? We said that. The Shabbat. What else? Okay, all of you are wrong. That's not right. That's not right. That's later on when God promises that he's going to take them into the land. And it's Joshua leading them. And it says Joshua wasn't trying to lead them into land, he's trying to lead them into the kingdom. That's not this. This is God having Paro say, get out. Where are they getting out to? Okay, Exodus chapter 3. I've taught this so many times, but I never taught it. I never gave the bottom line to it. I've mentioned it, I've taught it, I danced around it, but I never really examined it. Here's where they're going. No, they were not. They're going on a 3-day journey into the wilderness. They're supposed to be going on a 3-day journey into the wilderness. That's not Mount Sinai. How long did it take them to get from Egypt to Mount Sinai? You better know this answer. From Passover to Shavuot. From Passover to Shavuot. Counting the Omer. 49 days, 50 days, 49 days. It took 50 days, not 3 days. So where's 3 days' journey? Where's that? All right, Exodus 3, verse 12. Certainly I will be with you, God says to Moses, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who has sent you, Shalach. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. So we know they're going to leave Egypt and go where? Mount Sinai. That's 50 days. Same chapter, verse 18. They will pay heed to what you say, God is speaking to Moses, and you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please, let us go a 3 days journey into the desert, and we will sacrifice to the Lord our God. Is that Mount Sinai? No, that's 50 days. Chapter 8, verse 27. We must go a 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he establishes for us. Paro said, okay, I'll let you go, that you may sacrifice to Yahweh, or Yehovah, your God, in the wilderness. Only, don't go too far. So they have this bargain that goes back and forth between them 4 times. Okay, you can go, but don't go far. Okay, you can go, but leave the kids. Okay, you can go, but leave the animals. Okay, you can go, but leave the women and the children. And they keep going back and forth. All right, so where is this? I'm going to get rid of the map. Where is this that they're going? 3 days. Where is that? I mean, this is the plan of God to take them 3 days into the wilderness. Well, where the heck is that? He's got the whole thing planned out. I always thought it was Mount Sinai, but that's 50 days away. So where is it? Okay, let's back up. God says you shall not go by the way of the Philistines, even though it's right there, it's real close, because you'll see war and you will return to Egypt for help, for horses, for help, for him to be your savior. So I'm going to send you south. You'll stay in Egypt, go along the Red Sea, and then you'll get trapped. You'll be trapped. You're armed for war and you won't be able to fight. I'll fight. That's the war I want. So basically God is forcing a war. He's forcing them, he's backing them into a corner. I want you to go 3 days into the wilderness and get trapped so that I can destroy Pharaoh. You're not going to kill him.
Wow, that's cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, because they say it's once there, but then they say we're going to push Israel into the sea, and there they are.
Right. We're going to push Israel into the sea. They're backed into a corner. Okay, fine. Go ahead and try. God's going to destroy you. Right? It's a great tactic. So God is saying, I want to do the war. I'm the man of war. There is no way you're going to beat 600 iron chariots. You don't even know how to do warfare. You're slaves. What are you going to do? Hit them with sticks? So he's forcing a warfare. That's why he said, you shall never return to Egypt for help. I want to be your savior. And so he forces it. Guess where the 3 days journey in the wilderness is? It's the corner that they're going to be backed into. Exodus 13. And tells us where the camps are. A camp, a mahan, is overnight. It's at least one overnight stay. A camp, a mahan in Hebrew. So, if it says they camped, there's a camp, that means they stayed there at least one night, overnight. At least one day. Exodus 13, verse 19. Verse 18. God led the people around by the Derech Arava, excuse me, by the way of the wilderness to the Reed Sea. And the sons of Israel went up by fives, armed for war, from the land of Egypt. And Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him. Where did he get the bones of Joseph? That means he had to go get them. For he had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God shall surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones from here with you. Then they set out from Sukkot. How'd they get to Sukkot? I thought they were in Ramses. Weren't they in Ramses?
Maybe that was,
Didn't it say they left Ramses? They headed out from Ramses?
yeah,
So how'd they get to Sukkot?
that's probably different.
That's where the bones of Joseph were. That's where the bones of Joseph were. That's the first camp. So, to Sukkot, Joseph's bones, that's one day. And then, verse 20, they set out from Sukkot and camped in Etam. That's 2 days on the edge of the wilderness. So they're right there on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them on the derech, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so they might travel both day and night. Not now. This is when they're in the wilderness. He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people. This is later, when they're actually traveling. Now the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp again. Where are they? Where are they? Come on. No, they're at Etam. They went from Ramses to Sukkot, day 1. They went from Sukkot to Etam, day 2. They're in Sukkot, and verse 2, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp. Camp. That's the 3rd day. From before Pi Hahirot, between Migdol and the sea. And you shall camp in front of Baal Zephon, opposite by the sea. Now they are down here. There's a big flat plain right by the Reed Sea. There's a pillar there that Solomon erected that says this is where they crossed the Reed Sea. Did you know that? It's still there. There's one here on this side, and there's one here on this side. And they're at Baal Zephon, Pi Hahirot. This is the 3rd day. This is when God said, I want you to go 3 days in the wilderness, he's talking about the Reed Sea crossing. And what does he say he wants to do at the Reed Sea? I'm sorry. What does he say? What does God say he wants Israel to do when they get 3 days in the wilderness? What does he want them to do? Moses told Pharaoh this. We have to go 3 days for,
Make sacrifices.
right, to make sacrifices. They're at the Reed Sea. To make sacrifices of
Pharaoh.
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 This is the sacrifices. This is not about the crossing of the Reed Sea. This is about the future. All of this whole story is about the future. And by the way, I am not the only one who says this. There are rabbis who have said this, which I will show you. We went over this 2 weeks ago.
Right.
The tannin, the dragon who lives in the midst of his rivers. Isaiah 27 calls him leviathan. And then it calls him the nachash, the serpent. And then in the same verse it calls him the tannin, the dragon. And he lives where? In the waters. It ain't water. I will return you by the way I said you will never return, in ships to be slaves to Paro. And it's on land. The water is not water, it's a picture. You see what I'm saying? The crossing of the Reed Sea is not the crossing of the Reed Sea, it's a picture. It's a picture of the destruction of Paro and his men, which is not Paro and his men. Isaiah 51 says that the Rahav is the tannin in the waters long ago. So the leviathan equals the nachash equals the tannin. The tannin equals Rahav. So we have 4 titles for this guy. 5. Paro, Leviathan, Nachash, Tannin, and Rahav. We have 5 titles for him. Tannin means a dragon. Ezekiel 32 says the dragon, the tannin, is in the waters. Is it waters? No. It is not. Revelation 12:3 through 17 talks about the beast, the tannin, the dragon from the sea. It's not the sea, it's people. It even says in the chapter, and the sea is peoples and tongues and nations. It even tells us. In Revelation 13, same thing. I saw the beast coming up out of the sea. The crossing of the Reed Sea is not about the crossing of the Reed Sea. The crossing of the Reed Sea is a picture. And the rabbis say this, and here's where they get it from. This is the Song of the Sea in the Bible. This is what it looks like in the Torah. Yeah, the highlight is not there in the Torah. That was added. But it's got a right side, it's got a middle portion, and it's got a left side. What do you think that's a picture of? The parting of the Reed Sea. That's why it's written like that. And in the middle portion tells the whole story. If you just take the middle portion and read it, it tells the whole story. I mean, perfectly. All you have to do is read it. Read it. Read it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's like so clear. It tells the story. Now it's called by 2 names. It's called Song of the Sea, which is Shir Hayam, Shir, song, Hayam, the sea, Song of the Sea. It's also called by the first 3 words. Az Yashir Moshe. Az Yashir Moshe. They drop off Az because it's just talking about what happened, and it's Yashir Moshe. And Moses sang. That sounds past tense, doesn't it?
Yep.
It's not past tense. And Moses will sing. It's future. Yashir sang. This is what it says. And this is what the rabbis teach about it. It's in the imperfect tense in Hebrew, which means about to sing. Like it doesn't translate in English.
Fix it, too.
No, not fixing to. That you're thinking American, by God. You got to think Middle Eastern. Yelle, yelle, go. Doesn't mean walk. It means go. Yelle. Well, it's in Middle Eastern, fixing to means future. Like about to sing means about. About to, way in the future. Not right now. About to means way in the future. In Middle Eastern, both Arabic and Hebrew. So the rabbis read that and they say about to sing, or something that will happen at a later date. It could be taken to mean that Moshe and the sons of Israel will one day sing this song. Does it say that in the Bible anywhere, that in the future they will sing this song? And here's what the rabbis say. The resurrection of the dead is seen in this one word, Yashir. The resurrection of the dead is seen in that one word, Yashir. Why?
One day.
Because Moses died. How's he about to sing? He about to sing, by God. How's he going to sing in the future if he's dead? So, have to be resurrected. So now this is the words of the rabbis. They see the resurrection because it's in the imperfect tense, which means Moses in the future is going to sing this song with Israel. So I'm going to ask again, does it say that in the Bible anywhere? That Moses and Israel will sing the song of Moses? All right? Yeah. It's in Revelation. Look at Revelation chapter 15. It says it straight up. And I saw another sign in heaven, another picture, great and wonderful. 7 angels who had 7 plagues. Why are there 7 angels? Why are there 7 seals? 7 years of the birth pangs. 7 angels, 7 fire pans, 7 seals, because there's 7 years. I saw the 7, yeah, you're getting there. 7 angels who had the 7 plagues, which are the last, because in them the wrath of God is finished. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who had come off victorious from the beast, and from his image, and from the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of God. And they sang. It sounds past tense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not. And they sing, is what it says in Greek. They sing, present tense. And they sing the song of Moses, the bondservant of God, and the song of the Lamb. So, Yashir Moshe. They sang the song of Moshe, Yashir Moshe. In the kingdom, in the future, after the resurrection. So the parting of the Red Sea was the destination of the 3 days journey into the desert, yes? All right? That's the journey into the desert. God said, you shall not go on this short route, and then you'll see war and you'll want to return to Egypt. It is not talking about them leaving Egypt. It's talking about in the day of the Lord. You shall never again return to Egypt to seek help. So it's talking about in the day of the Lord, Israel seeking help from the false Messiah. Do you think they do it?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
And that's what got them there in the first place, because they saw.
That's right. That's what got them there in the first place. But they're going to do it again in the day of the Lord. They're going to seek the help of the false Messiah in the first half of the birth pangs. And then the false Messiah is going to rise up and make war on them. And they're going to go return to Egypt by a way that he said, I'll never take you again, but I will take you. I'm going to send you back to Egypt, to the false Messiah. So this is all about the day of the Lord. So, when Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. And they go to the promised land. Doesn't that sound ridiculous now?
Yeah. Pretty much.
There was no promised land. That didn't even come yet. There was no Torah given yet. They didn't get to Mount Sinai yet. They hadn't met God. They weren't even supposed to go to Mount Sinai. I mean, they didn't know about that. Only Moses knew about that. You shall return here and worship. Remember?
Yeah.
Israel didn't know about that. All they knew was, we're going 3 days in the wilderness. They've gone 3 days, and we're backed into a corner. We're going to die. That's what I want. God said, that's what I want. I want to back you into a corner so I become your Savior. And that was the whole point. So, when it says, you shall not return by this way to Egypt, he's saying, in the future, you shall not return to the false Messiah for help. That is the one thing you cannot do. Israel later on was going to the promised land, but they were not going to the promised land. Where were they going? To the day. Well, Hebrews 3-4 calls it rest, a day, a seventh day, a Sabbath. Calls it all four of those. But that's later on. Before they're even thinking about a promised land, God has already shown them the day of the Lord. He's already shown them the false Messiah. He's already shown them the destruction of the false Messiah by God and called him Leviathan, Rahab, tannin. What's the other one? Nachash. Thank you. Nachash. He's already told them. And they've already seen the destruction of the false Messiah by God himself. This is why we sing Adon Olam. Think about the words in Adon Olam now. I've got a translation here for you. We're going to sing Adon Olam. And I want you to look at the words. I'm your Savior. He's my Savior. He's my shield. Right? When in times of distress. This is all about the day of the Lord. Let's stand up. We're just going to do the Hebrew because I'm working on the English translation still. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra le'et nasa v'chetzo kol azai melech shemo yikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora V'hu haya, v'hu hoveh, v'hu yiyeh, b'tifara, v'hu echad, v'ein sheni, lahamashil lo lahachbira, b'li reshit, b'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz, v'hamisra, v'hu eli, V'chai goali, v'tzur chevli ba'et tzara, v'hu nisi umanos li, manat kosi v'yom ekra be'yado afkid ruchi, ba'et ishan v'a'ira, v'im ruchi v'giati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Look at the third verse. He is one, no other there, to join with him or to compare. Without beginning, with no end, to him belongs all rule and power. And that leads you into thinking about God doing what he's going to do.
Yeah.
My God, redeemer of my life, and my rock in times of strife. This is Tzur, the birth pangs. It has the word Sarah. But Tzur, Chevli, but Sarah has both words, Tzur and Sarah, trouble. And my rock in times of trouble, strife. My banner he, refuge to me, my cup the day I call, he'll be. To him my spirit I commit in time of sleep, awakening, the resurrection. My spirit, when away it slips, my Lord with me, I shall not fear. Shabbat Shalom.